Look, I don't think journalists go to war with sources or with government agencies. They do their job and ask them questions. I was thinking about this the other day. Why is it you're so into the Pharmac thing? What got you on this? And I'm not going to call it a crusade. What made you specialise in this area of journalism?
It all began during COVID, actually, and through a period of time, I've contributed sometimes to give little campaigns that come up on your social media. People need access to drugs or what have you, and you throw them $100 or what have you. And a number of women I know are in that space and supporting people. But if you go on Give a Little, I mean, that's become literally a platform for survival in New Zealand. Just lots of people on there trying to fundraise for drugs. But one of the key story really that came across my radar was for a drug called Spinraza to treat children with spinal muscular atrophy. And that affects about 5 children, babies, every year. And there are 4 types of SMA. The most severe, type 1, children won't survive their first birthday. But it's a brutal disease. It affects how children breathe. They go on respirators. They can't swallow. It starts to slowly cripple their spine. And I couldn't work out why in the rest of the world we were funding this drug, and in Pharmac we weren't. And some pretty simple reasons, really. It's considered a rare disorder. Pharmac's objectives set in the 1990s were to basically spend as little as possible to treat the majority of New Zealanders. They don't focus on rare disorders, but also the more I worked out or really buried down into it, I realised that Pharmac don't take a cost to society approach. So the drug ultimately costs between, I think, $500,000 and $1 million a year. That's for everybody.
That's chicken feed. Yeah.
Absolutely. But by not treating this disease, these kids are in and out of hospital. They're having their lungs cleared. They end up in wheelchairs. Their mums or dads can't work. If the children with still SMA, but not the severe form, can get to school.
So the cumulative cost is way higher. The collateral cost is way higher than $500,000 or $1 million.
Absolutely. And you know, parents stop contributing to the economy because they can't work. I mean, the costs to New Zealand are significant. But because Pharmac's objectives are just, well, how much money have we got in the pot? We can't afford that, and they don't fund it. And they operate in this silo. It was just such a flawed approach. But the minute I talked about SMA, suddenly patients just started coming out of the woodwork with cystic fibrosis, with Crohn's and colitis, with a myriad of different cancers. And it's very hard to say, oh, no, sorry, I was just focusing on spinal muscular atrophy. And it just started to escalate. And that's what then became the medicine gap, which was designed to be kind of, I don't know, 8-week, 10-week campaign of storytelling.
Yeah.
And 3 years on, here I am.
Yeah, you are. And you clearly were effective because...
Yeah, I was.
You know, really Pharmac took notice. What was the response of Pharmac in general, and it is a big bureaucracy in a government department, to your interest in this? Because often I look at bureaucracy and they quite like having expert journalists or journalists that specialise because they get the nuance of how a system might work. Was your newfound or your interest, your zealotry, I don't mean that in a negative sense, was that welcomed by the people at Pharmac? Did they say, geez, we'd like to talk to you more? These are good issues you're raising?
Initially, I think they probably did like my interest because initially I took the stance of every other, journalist who's approached this, which is actually it's just a funding issue. We need more money. And so I think they sort of thought, well, as long as I was saying, look, these, we need to be treating this, we need to be a first world nation, I think they thought, well, this is good, we might get some more money. But as I buried down into it, I realised that actually Pharmac was also a big part of the problem and that they hadn't modernised and they hadn't taken this cost to society view, that actually the more I investigated, I realised that they were judge, jury and executioner. They would go to the DHBs and say, what sort of money do you want? And then the CEO would go to the minister and go, can we have this much? They never would go and say, we've got some big drugs that could really help our health system coming through. They can reduce the burden on the
almost
health
reactive
system.
Bureaucracy system, budget-driven, rather than, if you like, mission-focused.
Yeah, absolutely. And not giving advice up to the ministers, not saying, we've got some remarkable gene editing equipment that's coming through, which is extraordinary for genetic disorders. They don't even have a medicine strategy. And then I started to see Labor would say, we're throwing lots of money at them. And I would say, yeah, but without any outcomes, they don't have to achieve anything.
You're not measuring, you've got no KPIs. Yeah,
Absolutely. You're just throwing cash at them, and it's clearly a structure that's flawed. Why do you keep throwing money? It's not necessarily that you have to keep throwing money. You just have to change the way that you look at the funding methodology and realise what are we saving.
It seems to me over time, and you can tell me, that the ministry's disquieted the, I think, valid criticisms you were raising, kind of morphed almost into an institutional, anger towards you or antipathy towards you. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they take it deeply personally. I think we've seen from what the Privacy Act request.
Yeah, I want to get to this. Why did you make those Privacy Act requests, and did this all come to a head with the Keytruda thing?
So, the drug you're talking about actually is Trikafta. Trikafta was the cystic fibrosis. Yeah, absolutely. I've advocated for a few. But it came to a head for a number of reasons, but crucially, I have been on and on and on at Sarah Fitch, the CEO, and Steve Mahari, the chair of Pharmac, for an interview in the wake of the Pharmac review. Now, there were 33 recommendations in there, some pretty damning ones about governance. The board was accused of just really doing a bit of admin and box ticking and not actually governing and not giving advice up into Pharmac. I wanted to speak to both of them. To this day, Sean, neither Mahari or Fitch have given an interview about the Pharmac review. They've issued a statement, but they will not be challenged on it.